Hello my dear students. So I'm going to continue with the extra questions. Extra question 26. So as you all know, we are discussing classification as well as nomenclature. So in the lesson, we have discussed what classification is, artificial and natural classifications, and under natural classification, the scientific classification proposed by Carl Woese, that's the 3-domain classification. Under that, we have discussed the 3 domains, domain Archaea, domain Bacteria, and domain Eukarya. Under domain Eukarya, we have discussed the 4 kingdoms. Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae, and Kingdom Animalia. Under Kingdom Plantae and Animalia, we have discussed the subgroups as well. So with that, you all have a good understanding about the classification, and also you all know about nomenclature, the binomial nomenclature proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. And we are discussing extra questions related to that lesson. Extra question 26. Write the suitable group or groups of vertebrate in the second column relevant to the feature given in the first column of the table. So if you look at the table, students, this is the first column that gives the features of the organisms, and in the second column you have to write either one group or it can be more than one groups. We will look at the features. First one, 2-chambered heart, and also here you all know, students, it has to be a vertebrate group. So under vertebrates, what are the groups? Pisces, the fishes. Then we have amphibians, amphibia. Then we have reptilia, the reptiles. Aves, birds. And mammalia, mammals. So those are the groups that we need to consider here. 2-chambered heart. You all can remember in the evolutionary process, Pisces, that is the fishes, have 2-chambered heart. Then what happens? When it comes to amphibia, the heart becomes 3-chambered. So when it is 2-chambered, 1 atria and 1 ventricle. When it comes to 3 chambers, 2 atria and 1 ventricle. Then when we go to reptilia, what happens? There are 2 atria and the ventricle is partially divided. Then after that we have aves and mammalia. Both of them, birds and mammals, have 4-chambered heart. 2 atria and 2 ventricles. So that's how the evolution takes place. 2-chambered heart, it is Pisces. Then 3-chambered heart, it is amphibia. So here we have amphibia. Then 4-chambered heart. I told you all it has to be both aves and mammalia. So aves and mammalia. Then the 4th one, 2 atria and a partially divided ventricle. What is that? It has to be reptilia. Reptilia. Then we have 2 more properties, homeothermic and poikilothermic. What are those properties? You all know those. The warm-blooded animals and cold-blooded animals. Homeothermic or homoiothermic warm-blooded animals means the body temperature does not change with the external environment temperature. So those animals are warm-blooded animals. What are they? The birds and mammals. So it's aves and mammalia. Aves and mammalia. Then we have poikilothermic animals. What are poikilothermic animals? Cold-blooded animals. Their body temperature changes with the change in environmental temperature. So those are the rest of the group. Pisces, amphibia and reptilia. All of them are cold-blooded or poikilothermic organisms. So here we have to write Pisces, amphibia and I will write it down. It has to be reptilia. So all three have body temperature that changes according to the environment temperature, or poikilothermic organisms. I am sure you all can remember all these features and you would have answered them correctly. With that, students, I will move on to the next one. Extra question 27. Classify the organisms given below into the 5 groups of vertebrates. So here again the 5 groups of vertebrates. So here you can see the organisms given, the animals: tortoise, ostrich, magpie, frog, loris, orangutan, turtle, swan, toad, butterfly fish, gorilla, salamander, kiwi, duck, dolphin, lizard, man, seahorse, shark, monitor, penguin, bat, swan and stag. So I am sure you are familiar with all these animals. We have to classify them into all these 5 groups: fishes, amphibia, reptilia, aves or aves and mammalia. If we look at the first one, tortoise, what is it? It is a reptile. So tortoise is a reptile. Then we have ostrich. Ostrich is the largest bird. So aves, ostrich. Then we have magpie. Magpie, blue magpie, it's a bird. Different colors are there, so magpie is a bird. Then we have frog. What is a frog? An amphibian. So frog is an amphibian. Then we have loris. Loris is a mammal. An example of a mammal. Loris. We have orangutan. That's also a mammalian. So orangutan is a mammal. Then we have turtle. Like tortoise, turtle is also a reptile. Turtle. Turtle. Then we have swan. Swan is a bird, so it comes under aves or aves. Swan. Then we have toad. Frog, toad, they all belong to amphibia. Toad. After toad, what do we have? We have butterfly fish. So butterfly fish means it comes under Pisces. It comes under Pisces. Butterfly fish. Butterfly fish. Then we have gorilla. Gorilla is a mammal. Gorilla. A mammal. Then we have salamander. What is a salamander? It's an amphibian. So salamander comes under amphibia. Salamander. Salamander, amphibia. How about kiwi? A bird, again a bird that cannot fly. So it comes under aves, kiwi. Duck. Duck is also a bird. Duck is also a bird. Then we have dolphin. Dolphin is a mammal that lives in the sea. So, mammalia. Lizard. What is a lizard? It's a reptile. So, reptilia. Lizard. Then what do we have? We have man. Man, a mammalian. After man, we have seahorse. Seahorse is what? It's a fish. So, it comes under Pisces. Seahorse. Seahorse comes under Pisces. Then shark. Again another type of fish. Shark. You all know the difference, students. Shark is a cartilaginous fish. Whereas butterfly fish and seahorses, they are bony fishes. Then we have the monitor. Monitor, it's a reptile. So, it comes under reptilia. Then we have the penguin. Penguin, again, a bird that cannot fly. So, it comes under aves. Penguin. After that, we have bat. I'm sure you all know what bat is. It's a mammal. So it has to come under Mammalia. Bat. Finally, we have swan and stag. Swan is a white color bird. You all know that. So swan comes under aves. Then we have stag. Deer, stag, they are all mammals. So Mammalia. Stag is a mammal. So we have classified all the organisms and these are the examples. Under pisces, we have butterfly fish, seahorse and shark. And under amphibia, we have frog, toad and salamander. Then under reptilia, we have tortoise, turtle, lizard and monitor. Aves, we have ostrich, magpie, swan, kiwi, duck, penguin and swan. The swan has been repeated twice, students, but it's the same bird. You all know that. Then mammalia, we have loris, orangutan, gorilla, dolphin, man, bat and stag. So in all these groups, students, you all can see the difference, the diversity. Now these three fishes are different from each other, but they belong to fishes or Pisces. Why? Because they have the basic features or the characteristic features of Pisces. Whereas you take amphibia, frog and toad almost look the same. But salamander is different in its appearance, but still it is an amphibian. Then reptilia, tortoise, turtle, lizard, monitor. So here also you all know tortoise and turtle, they look somewhat similar. And lizard and monitor, they do have similar features, but they all belong to reptilia based on all the characteristics. So now you all can understand, students, how we see similarities, special features between the organisms of the same species and also difference between different groups of organisms. Then we have the birds and finally we have the mammalia. So these are all the animals that come under vertebrate and we have classified them into the 5 different classes. I'm sure you also did this correctly. With that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 28. Briefly explain the reasons as to why scientists proposed a naming system for organisms. Why did they need a naming system? You all know when we go to different countries, a particular organism is referred by different names. In our country, we have a certain name. In another country, there will be a different name. Even in our country, if we go to different parts of our country, different regions of a certain country, the same organism will be referred by different names or even based on languages. One country has more than one languages. So you call the particular organism by different names based on language, based on country and the region. So because of that, it becomes difficult to get information about a particular organism. It can become a bit complex. So to avoid that confusion and complexity, scientists felt the need to come up with a standard way of naming organisms. So that is the scientific naming system. The other thing is, these normal names or common names or what we call as vernacular names, they actually don't give out or they actually don't show the evolutionary relationships between different species of organisms. So that is also lacking in common names. Because of these two main reasons, scientists had to propose a naming system, a scientific naming system. So to answer this question, we can say, so here briefly explain the reasons as to why scientists proposed a naming system for organisms. So here, name of an organism varies based on language, country, language, country and region. The next one, common names does not show the evolutionary relationship among different species of organisms. So these are the reasons why they had to come up with a scientific naming system. Then, if we look at the next part of the question, write the name of the scientist who proposed a successful scientific nomenclature. Who is the scientist? Carolus Linnaeus. That's why we call him the father of nomenclature. He proposed binomial nomenclature. So, Carolus Linnaeus. He is the scientist who proposed the binomial nomenclature. So, if we look at the questions, briefly explain the reasons as to why scientists proposed a naming system for organisms. Name of an organism varies based on language, country and region. Common names does not show the evolutionary relationship among different species of organisms. So, those are the two reasons. And Carolus Linnaeus is the scientist who proposed the binomial nomenclature. So, I am sure students, you all also wrote a similar answer. So, with that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 29. Write the standards of binomial nomenclature. What are the standards of binomial nomenclature? The scientific name of a certain organism or a species need to contain or it contains two epithets. And the first epithet is the generic epithet and the second epithet is the specific epithet. So, I will write the standards one by one. First one, scientific name of a species has two epithets. And then first epithet is the generic epithet. And the second epithet is the specific epithet. Then, the two epithets, what is the language of the names? The species name or the name of a species is written either in, it is actually in Greek or Latin. So, the name of a species is in Greek or Latin. But do we write it in Greek or Latin? No. We write it in English or Roman. So here the scientific name is written in English, or you can say Roman. What are the other standards? The first letter of the generic epithet has to be capital. All the others are written in simple letters. The first letter of the generic epithet is capital. And the rest of the letters are simple. Then, what is the next one? If they are printed, they have to be italicized. If it's handwritten, the two epithets have to be underlined. So, here we can say, when printed, the scientific name is italicized. When handwritten, the epithets are underlined. So those are the standards. If we write an example, you all are familiar with these names. Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens, man, wise man. So here, this is the generic epithet, this is the specific epithet. We have to write the name in English letters. So the name of the species is either in Greek or Latin, and when we are handwriting it, handwritten, they have to be underlined. And also you can see the first letter of the generic epithet is capital, the rest of the letters are simple. So Homo sapiens. I am sure you are very familiar with all these standards. I will go back and read the standards again. Go through the standards again. So here, write the standards of binomial nomenclature. Scientific name of a species has two epithets. First epithet is the generic epithet and the second epithet is the specific epithet. The name of a species is in Greek or Latin. And if we see, the scientific name is written in English or Roman. The first letter of the generic epithet is capital and the rest of the letters are simple. And when printed, the scientific name is italicized. And when handwritten, the epithets are underlined. So I am sure you all can write all these standards correctly and you are familiar with all these standards. So with that, students, I will move on to the next question. Some scientific names are given below. State if they have been written according to the standard or not. Briefly state how the name does not comply with the standard. So you have to say whether it has been written correctly. If not, we have to say what is the mistake. The first one, Homo sapiens. So here If you check the two epithets, generic and specific epithets, all those are correct. First letter of the generic epithet is capital. But since it is typed, it has to be italicized. It is not. So that is the mistake. So here we can say not correct, or we can say incorrect. Incorrect. Why? The name is not italicized. Italicized. The name is not italicized. Then the next one, Gallus lafayette. What is that? The jungle fowl. Jungle fowl, the name is correct, but what is the problem here? The two epithets are written, but all the letters are in capital. So that is a mistake. That is what we have to say here. So here again this is incorrect. Why? All the letters are capital. So here students, you all can see this is incorrect because all the letters are capital. And the other thing, like the above, when it is typed, the letters have to be italicized. So that has also not been done there. Then you have to include that as well. Letters are not italicized. So two mistakes. With that, I'll move on to the next one. So the next example is Puntius asoka. You all know this is Asokapetia, a fish. So here, what are the mistakes? As you look at the word, as you look at the binomial nomenclature, you know there is a mistake. There are again two mistakes. The generic and specific epithets are okay, but the problem is the first letter of the generic epithet has not been written in capital letter. And also, it has not been italicized. So, again, this is incorrect. So, here we can say all are simple letters. Or you can say the first letter of the generic epithet is not capital. And the second one, not italicized. That is also a mistake. Then what about the next one? Coccus nucifera, mango tree. Generic epithet is correct, but the specific epithet, the first letter is capital. That is incorrect. So, here also incorrect. The first letter of the specific epithet is in capital letters. Is in capital. We will say is in capital. And also epithets are not italicized. Epithets are not italicized. Two mistakes there. Then we have the last one. Everything seems correct. Mangifera indica, mango tree. Generic epithet, specific epithet, first letter of the generic epithet is correct, capital letter, the rest of the letters are simple. So all those are correct. But what is the mistake? The word is not, or the name is not italicized. If it is printed, it has to be italicized. So here also incorrect. The name is not italicized. That is the only mistake. So I am sure students, when you all look at all these scientific names, you all are able to identify whether the name has been written according to the standard or not. In the first one, you can see here, all the letters are simple and not italicized. Whereas in Coccus nucifera, both the letters, first letter of the generic epithet and the specific epithet has been printed in capital letters and also not italicized. But in the last one, all those standards have been followed, but the words have not been italicized. So because of those, all these scientific names have not been written according to standard. So I am sure you were also able to identify that correctly. With that, I will move on to the next slide. Extra question 30. So here, what are the significance of classification of organisms? What are the significance? You all know when we try to study about all the organisms individually, it is a very tedious task. It's almost impossible for one person to remember all the features of all the organisms. So when they are classified into groups in a proper manner, it's easy to study the organisms. So that is the first significance. Easy to study the organisms. Easy to study about easy to study about the organisms. So when we say study about organisms, when you look at an organism, you try to understand the features, all the different features of it. Then what happens is we tend to identify specific distinguishable characteristics of organisms. So from those characteristics only, we differentiate and identify the organisms. Obviously, you all know the difference between a cat and a dog. But to understand the difference between a turtle and a tortoise, or organisms like that which belong to the same group, they are very similar in characteristics, but still they are different. So to identify the difference and to identify the organism, we need to understand the specific distinguishable characteristics. So that can be understood from the scientific classification or the normal classification method. So that is again a significance of classification of organisms. Can identify specific distinguishable characteristics of organisms. So that is the first drawback. What is the second one? The artificial classification does not explain the natural relationships among the organisms of a particular species or organisms that belong to a certain group. So that is what we have to write next. It does not explain the natural relationships among organisms of the same species. So that is the second drawback. So I am sure students you were able to write these two drawbacks correctly. So with that I will move on to the next question. Extra question 30. Write the names of the scientists related to the following. The first one, first scientific classification. Who was the scientist who proposed the first scientific classification? You all can remember in 4th century BC, before Christ. It was Aristotle who introduced the first scientific classification. So there it has to be Aristotle. Then the second one, first successful scientific classification. Who introduced the first successful scientific classification? Carolus Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus. Then the third one, three-domain classification, what we discussed in detail. Carl Woese. That is Carl Woese. Then we have the five kingdom classification that was introduced by Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker. Then the last one, binomial nomenclature, again by Carolus Linnaeus. Binomial nomenclature by Carolus Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus. So you have to remember all these scientists, students. First scientific classification was introduced by Aristotle. Then the first successful scientific classification was proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. In that you all know he was the person who proposed the different hierarchy of taxonomical levels. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, family, order, genus, species. So those are the different taxonomical levels. We have discussed that before. Then if we look at the three-domain classification, Carl Woese, and the five kingdom classification by Robert Whittaker, and binomial nomenclature again by Carolus Linnaeus. So those are the scientists related to classification and nomenclature that you all need to remember. With that, we will move on to the next question. Extra question 32. Complete the diagram given below. So here you can see animals have been classified into two groups, invertebrates and vertebrates. So you all know invertebrates don't have a vertebral column, vertebrates have a vertebral column. We have to write the groups that come under invertebrates and vertebrates. So under invertebrates, what are the different phyla? You all can remember Cnidaria or Cnidaria. Another name for Cnidaria, we call them Coelenterata. Coelenterata. Then we have Annelida. Annelida. Then we have Mollusca, Arthropoda, Echinodermata or Echinodermata. Cnidaria, Coelenterata, Annelida, Mollusca, Arthropoda and Echinodermata. Then we have vertebrates. What are the groups? Rhesus, Amphibia, Reptilia, Aves and Mammalia. So, invertebrates and vertebrates. Vertebrates, fishes, amphibia, reptilia, aves and mammalia. So, we have completed the diagram. I am sure you all also completed this correctly. With that, I will move on to the next one. Extra question 33. Write the term used for the following features. First one, organism that do not have an organized nucleus. What do you call them? The prokaryotes or prokaryotic organisms. So, we can say prokaryotes or you can say prokaryotic organisms. So, when we say write the term, even prokaryotic organism is considered as one term. Then the second one, organisms that possess the ability to cause diseases. What do we call them? Pathogens. Pathogenic organisms, pathogens. So, pathogens, again we can say pathogenic organisms. Then cells that possess an organized nucleus. What are those? Those are eukaryotic cells. So, here we have to say eukaryotic cells. If I go back, organisms that do not have an organized nucleus, we call them prokaryotes or prokaryotic organisms. Whereas cells that possess an organized nucleus, we call them eukaryotic cells. Organisms that possess the ability to cause diseases, they are either pathogens or pathogenic organisms. Then the last one, cells that possess an organized nucleus, eukaryotic cells. So, there is a difference between the name of the cell and name of the organism. It's basically the same thing because the organism is made up of eukaryotic cells, then we can call them as eukaryotes or eukaryotic organisms. But the cell is referred to as eukaryotic cell. So, I am sure you all have written all these terms. With that, we will move on to the next slide. Extra question 34. Bacteria can be grown in the laboratory. Write the name of the medium used to grow bacteria. What is the medium? The culture medium. So, here it's the culture medium. Second one, agar is a substance used in preparation of the above medium. So, agar is a substance that is used to prepare the culture medium. The first part of the question, write the organism that is used to extract agar. From what organism do we extract agar? From algae. So, that is the organism, algae. You don't have to write the specific organism. If you write the group of or the type of organism, that's fine. Algae. Then the next one. Write the kingdom and domain of the organism you mentioned above. What is the kingdom of algae? Kingdom Protista. Algae and protozoans belong to kingdom Protista. And what is the domain? They all belong to domain Eukarya. So, kingdom and domain. So, kingdom Protista and domain Eukarya. So, we identify the culture medium, that is the medium used to grow bacteria. Then algae is used to extract agar, that is used to prepare the culture medium. And algae belongs to kingdom Protista, that is under domain Eukarya. So, I am sure you all were able to answer these. With that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 35. Select the organisms from within brackets suitable for the features given below. So, there are some organisms given in brackets. Brittle star, snail, hydra, cockroach and squid. So, you are familiar with all these organisms. What is the organism that has a pentaradial symmetry? You all know pentaradial symmetry is a feature of echinodermates. So what is the echinodermate here? The brittle star. So here it has to be brittle star. Brittle star. Then the second one, calcium carbonate internal shell. So you all can remember, students, when we say calcium carbonate internal shell, the phylum Mollusca, they have either internal shell or external shell made up of calcium carbonate. So if we look at the examples here, snail and squid, they are both mollusca. But snail has an external shell. You all have seen the shell of the snail. But squid has an internal shell. We don't see the external shell there. So it has an internal shell. So here the question is calcium carbonate internal shell. So that is squid. Then possess nematocyst. Nematocyst or nidocyst, those are present in cnidarians or coelenterate. Cnidarians, what are the cnidarians given here? If you look at the examples, Hydra is a cnidarian. So Hydra possesses nematocyst. Hydra. Then we have the next one, chitinous exoskeleton. Chitinous exoskeleton is a feature of arthropods. Out of the examples given, cockroach is an arthropod. So, chitinous exoskeleton, cockroach. Cockroach is an arthropod. Then finally, we have calcium carbonate external shell. So, as I told you all, the mollusca has internal and external shells made up of calcium carbonate. So, squid we said has an internal shell and snail has the external shell. So, snail has the calcium carbonate external shell. So, pentaradial symmetry is present in brittle star, calcium carbonate internal shell in squid, nematocyst in hydra, chitinous exoskeleton in cockroach and calcium carbonate external shell in snail. So, I am sure you are able to answer these questions correctly. I'll move on to the next one. Extra question 36. How do plants differ from fungi in terms of the following features? So, you all can remember, students, we have domain Eukarya. Under domain Eukarya, we have kingdom fungi and kingdom plantae. So, when they are under domain Eukarya, they are all made up of eukaryotic cells. So, they have a eukaryotic cellular organization. Then we will look at their differences. Mode of nutrition. If you take the fungus, all fungi are heterotrophic. They don't produce their own food. They are either decomposers or saprophytic organisms. Whereas plants, they are all photoautotrophic. So, that is the main difference under mode of nutrition. So, mode of nutrition, fungi are heterotrophic, but plants are, we can say, autotrophic or photoautotrophic. I will say photoautotrophic. So, that is the difference in mode of nutrition. Then reproduction. What can we say about reproduction? Fungi reproduces asexually by spores, whereas the plants they reproduce either by vegetative reproduction, that is asexual reproduction, or sexual reproduction. Both are possible in plants. So, when we say reproduction, fungi reproduces asexually by spores. Plants carry out vegetative reproduction or sexual reproduction. Then the cell, again as I told you all, they are all eukaryotic cellular organization. So basically the cell structures are the same. But what is the difference? Fungi has a chitinous cell wall, whereas plants have a cellulose cell wall. So here fungi chitinous cell wall, and plants have cellulose cell wall. What else? One other main difference. Plants have chloroplast, whereas fungi, they do not have chloroplast. So the next one we say plant cells contain chlorophyll, pigments in chloroplast, but fungi do not have it. So if we look at all the differences, mode of nutrition, fungi are heterotrophic but plants are photoautotrophic. Reproduction, fungi reproduce asexually by spores, whereas plants carry out vegetative or sexual reproduction. And if we look at the cell structure, fungi have chitinous cell wall, whereas plants have cellulose cell wall. And in plant cells, there is chlorophyll present inside chloroplast. But in fungi, there is no chlorophyll nor chloroplast. So I am sure you all also know all these differences, students. And I am sure you would have written the correct answers. So with that, I will move on to the next slide. Extra question 37. Write 2 adaptations of fishes to live in water. So fishes are very well adapted to live in water. What are the adaptations? They have a streamlined body shape so that they can swim through water very easily. They have fins, tail fins and the other dorsal fins, ventral fins, or what we call as caudal fins. You can remember that. Those fins help them to swim and for balancing. Then they have the lateral line. For what? To detect vibrations in water. So all these, in addition to that, they have gills for respiration. So through the gills, the water goes in, they respire the oxygen and the water comes out. And they have eyes without eyelids. So those are all adaptations to live in water. So here we need to write 2 adaptations. So I will write the streamlined body shape and the presence of fins. So first one, streamlined body shape. And the next one, they possess fins for swimming and balancing. Swimming and balancing. Then the other question. Write 2 similarities between mammals and birds. What are the similarities between mammals and birds? Both of them have 4-chambered heart and also both are warm-blooded animals. So here they have 4-chambered heart. What are the chambers? 2 atria and 2 ventricles. But here if we write 4-chambered heart, that is enough. and they are warm-blooded animals. Warm-blooded animals. So those are the similarities. Right two adaptations of fishes to live in water, streamlined body shape, and they possess fins for swimming and balancing. In addition to that, you can mention about the lateral line, the presence of gills, and also eyes without eyelids. And here, write two similarities between mammals and birds. They have four-chambered heart, and also they are all warm-blooded animals. What are the other terms used? Homeothermic animals or homeothermic animals. All the terms correspond to the same concept. So I am sure students, you all were also able to answer these correctly. With that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 38. Explain the following terms briefly. First one, coelom. So a coelom is a fluid-filled cavity that is present between the body wall and the digestive tract. So starting from Annelida, all the other invertebrates possess a coelom. That is what we need to write here first. Coelom, a fluid-filled cavity, present between the body wall and digestive tract. What is the next one? Coelenteron. This is the cavity present in cnidarians or coelenterates. That's why you can remember the relationship. Coelenteron present in coelenterates. That is the body cavity of cnidarians. So here we can say body cavity, or we can say cavity present within the body of cnidarians. Or you can say coelenterates. Then, the next one. What are warm-blooded animals? Animals with body temperature that does not change with the environmental temperature. Or we also call them the homeothermic animals. So here we can see animals with body temperature that does not change with the environmental temperature. So animals with body temperature that does not change with the environmental temperature, these animals are known as warm-blooded animals. Then we have the last one, cold-blooded animals. Cold-blooded animals, animals with body temperature that changes with the change in environmental temperature. So animals with body temperature that changes with environmental temperature. So those are the Explanations. Coelom, fluid cavity present between the body wall and digestive tract. Coelenteron, cavity present within the body of cnidarians or coelenterate. Warm-blooded animals, animals with body temperature that does not change with the environmental temperature. Cold-blooded animals, animals with body temperature that changes with environmental temperature. So those are the explanations, students. I am sure you all were able to answer them correctly. With that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 39. Scientists classified organisms in various systematic ways. One such classification is shown in the diagram. Answer the questions given below based on this classification. So here you can look at the classification. You can see eukarya, archaea and bacteria. So that means you all know this is the 3-domain classification by Carl Woese. And under eukarya, they have 4 different groups A, B, C and D. So you all know those are the 4 kingdoms that are present under domain eukarya. If we look at the answers, write the name of the classification. So that is the 3-domain classification. Domain classification. Then the next question, who proposed this classification? That is Carl Woese. Carl Woese. Then the next question. Write one common structural feature of archaea and bacteria. What is the difference there? Archaea and bacteria, they are all prokaryotes. Whereas eukarya, their organisms are all eukaryotes. So write one common structural feature of archaea and bacteria. They have prokaryotic cellular organization. They have prokaryotic cellular organization. Then the next question. Write the name of the taxonomical level denoted by the letters A, B, C and D. What is the taxonomical level denoted by the letters? Those are the kingdoms. So here you have to write the answer as kingdom. There are some more questions, students. I will move on to the next one. Features of groups A, C and D are given. So A includes autotrophs and heterotrophs. You all know the 4 kingdoms, kingdom Protista, kingdom Fungi, kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia. And kingdom Protista, protozoans and algae. So protozoans are heterotrophs, algae are autotrophs. So A has to be Protista. Then B, they have not given. C, all are photoautotrophic organisms. Very easy. They are all plants. So C has to be kingdom Plantae. And D, all are multicellular heterotrophs. So when you take the fungi and animals, they are all heterotrophs, but the animals are all multicellular and they are heterotrophs. Because under fungi, we have unicellular as well as filamentous or mycelium structure. So because of that, D has to be kingdom Animalia and B that is not given there will be kingdom Fungi. So we have identified all the kingdoms. Identify group B. So that has to be kingdom Fungi. Kingdom Fungi. Write the organism that belong to group A and specify the autotrophs and heterotrophs. The 2 organisms that belong to group A, protozoans and algae. So here protozoans, they are heterotrophs. And algae are autotrophs. That's what they wanted you all to do. Then we have the next question. Write the name of the symbiotic relationship formed between organisms of group A and group B. Write the name of the symbiotic relationship formed between organisms of Group A, that is Protista, and Group B, that is fungi. Protista, protozoans and algae. Algae and fungi, they form the symbiotic relationship. What is the name? Lichens. So here write the name of the symbiotic relationship, lichen. Then we have question number 4. Write the two main groups under C. What is C? We identified it as plant A. Under plant A, what do we have? Flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Flowering plants, comma, non-flowering plants. Those are the two main groups. Then we have the last question. Group D is divided into two main groups based on the presence or absence of a structure. What is that structure? We identified group D as animals, Animalia. That is divided based on the presence and absence of vertebral column. So what is the structure? You have to give the answer as vertebral column. So here students, you all can easily understand all these questions. They are all related to what we have discussed before. Group B, we identified as kingdom fungi. Then the organisms belonging to group A, that is Protista, kingdom Protista, are protozoans. They are heterotrophs, and algae are autotrophs. Then the name of the symbiotic relationship between A and B, that is algae and fungi. Algae in A, fungi B, that is lichens. And thereafter, they wanted us to write them two main groups under C. Plants are divided mainly as non-flowering plants and flowering plants. And group D is divided into two main groups, that is the Animalia, based on the presence or absence of vertebral column. So I am sure you also answered all these questions correctly. With that, I will move on to the last question. Extra question 40. Some organisms of kingdom Animalia are given below. Answer the questions based on these organisms and their respective groups. So, can you identify the first organism? It's a starfish. Starfish belongs to Echinodermata. Then we have this. What is it? It is a sea anemone. Sea anemone, I will write the names also quickly. So, this is a starfish, Echinodermata. Then we have sea anemone. Sea anemone is a cnidarian. Then what is this? It is a crab. Crab belongs to phylum Arthropoda. And here you can see an octopus. Octopus belongs to phylum Mollusca. Here we have a centipede. A centipede belongs to phylum Arthropoda. Centipede. Centipede. Then here we have a, what is this? It is a seahorse. So now you are familiar with all these organisms, animals, you can easily identify them. What is this? A scorpion. A scorpion. And here we have a leech. So starfish, Echinodermata, sea anemone, Cnidaria or Coelenterata, crab, Arthropoda, octopus, Mollusca, centipede, Arthropoda, seahorse, it is a fish, scorpion, again Arthropoda, and leech, Annelida. So you know the respective groups as well. Now we will try to answer all the questions. Animal U is different from all the other animals. Why? So here you can see the animals again. We identified them. Animal U, that is the seahorse. What is the difference? I told you all seahorse, you all know it is a fish. Fishes are vertebrates, whereas all the other organisms are invertebrates. Echinodermata, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Annelida, those are all invertebrates. So that's the difference. We can say U is a vertebrate. Others are Other animals are invertebrates. Then the next question. Write the organism that has phylogenetic relationship with chordata. What is that organism? The echinodermates have a phylogenetic relationship with phylum Chordata. So what is the organism there? P, that is starfish. So it's P, starfish. Since we have identified all the organisms, I'll write the letter and the name. Then the next one. Write 3 animals that belong to the same phylum. What are the animals that belong to the same phylum? R, that is crab, T, centipede, and V, scorpion. All those belong to the same group. That is phylum Arthropoda. So write 3 animals that belong to the same phylum. We can either write the letters R, T, and V, or we can say crab, centipede, and scorpion. Those are the answers for these questions. There are some more questions, students. I will move on to the next slide. Before that, if you look at the answers, U is a seahorse. That is different because it's a vertebrate and all the other animals are invertebrates. And the organism that shows phylogenetic relationship with chordates is starfish, that is P, because it belongs to echinodermata. And the 3 animals that belong to the same phyla, that is phylum Arthropoda, are crab, centipede, and scorpion. So that is R, T, and V. So with that, I will move on to the next one. Write a common name given to the animals you mentioned in part 3 above. So I mentioned the name, those are the arthropods. Arthropods, or if you are to write the common name, what do we write? Jointed leg animals or animals with jointed legs. Then we have the next one. Write the name of the body form of animal Q. What is the name of the body form of animal Q? Q is a sea anemone. It is a sedentary body form, that is a polyp. So the name of the body form is polyp. And the next question. Write the name of an animal with the same body form mentioned in part 5 above, that is polyp, that forms reefs of calcium carbonate. You all can remember that we have discussed those. The coral polyps form coral reefs, that is calcium carbonate reefs. So here those are the coral polyps. Coral polyps. So common name, we call them arthropods, the animals of the same phyla. And then the body form of Q, that is sea anemone, is polyp. And the name of the animal similar to the same body form, that is polyp, we call them coral polyps or corals. I'm sure you know all these answers. With that, I will move on to the last part of the question. Write the name of the segmented worm. So in this, what is the segmented worm? Only W, leech. Leech is an annelid. Annelids are the segmented worms. So there, if we write the answer, leech. The letter is W. That is the only segmented worm. Give an example of an animal with external shell that belongs to the same group as S. S is octopus. Octopus is a mollusk. So similar to that, what is the animal we have? We don't have an animal here. We can think of snake. So we can write the organism as snake. Ninth one, compare the nature of the exoskeleton of animal R and the animal you mentioned in part 8 above. In part 8 above, we have mentioned snail. Snail has a calcium carbonate external shell. What about R? R is a crab. Crab has a chitinous exoskeleton. So there we can say snail, calcium carbonate, external shell. shell, while R has chitinous exoskeleton. Then question number 10. Write an example of an animal that has body made of functional segments called tagma. Again, those are arthropods. Write an example. There are 3. We will write crab. In addition to that, there is the centipede as well as the scorpion. You can write any one. The last 2 questions. Write the names of the 3 tagma. What are the 3 tagma? Head, thorax, and abdomen. Those are the 3 tagma. I am sure you all can remember that. The last one. Write 2 other animals that belong to the group of animal P. What is animal P? That is starfish. What are the other 2 animals you can think of? Brittle star, sea lily, sea cucumber, sea urchin. All those are animals that belong to echinodermata. So we can write the answer as sea lily and brittle star. So these are organisms that belong to the group of animal P. If I read the answers again, write the name of the segmented worm, that is leech, that's W. Give an example of an animal with external shell that belongs to the same group as animal S, that is snail, because S is octopus, a mollusk. And compare the nature of the exoskeleton of animal R and the animal you mentioned in part 8 above. Snail has a calcium carbonate external shell, whereas R has a chitinous exoskeleton. And write an example of an animal that has body made up of functional segments called tagma, that is crab. You can also include centipede and scorpion. Write the name of the 3 tagma, head, thorax and abdomen. And the last one, write 2 other animals that belong to the group of animal P, sea lily and brittle star. In addition to that, you can even write sea urchin, sea cucumber. All those are examples here. So with that, students, I have come to the end of this chapter and for that matter, end of the lesson. So I am sure with all these extra questions and the discussion of the lesson, you all have a very good understanding of the different types of classification, artificial and natural, and the 3-domain classification by Carl Woese and the binomial nomenclature by Carolus Linnaeus.